They thought it was just another shift, quiet, unnoticed, pushing a mop across the floor of a gym where no one cared to remember his name. But that night, one man decided to turn him into entertainment. A black belt, confident and smirking, called him out in front of everyone, mocking his work, his place, his very worth. Laughter filled the room. Yet beneath the humiliation was a strength no one saw coming. What happened next would silence every voice and expose a truth far deeper than a sparring match. The question is, who really stood victorious that night? He was a man who lived in the shadows of other people's lives, sweeping, scrubbing, polishing floors that never seemed to stay clean. To most, he was just the janitor, a face blurred in the background of daily routines. But behind the quiet, behind the uniform, was a man who carried himself with quiet dignity. He showed up on time, worked without complaint, and left without drawing attention. The gym was his second home, not because he belonged among the fighters, but because he made sure their space was spotless when the lights went out. He had seen champions train, coaches yell, and students chase glory, yet no one ever looked at him as more than the man with the mop. But on that evening, something was different. The crowd lingered longer than usual, watching a black belt boast about his skills, his dominance, his so-called unbeatable record. The fighter's eyes landed on the janitor, not with respect, but with amusement. It wasn't about proving skill that night. It was about power, about reminding everyone who was beneath him. And so the stage was set. A man who had spent his life overlooked was about to be dragged into the spotlight, but not on his own terms. The janitor didn't know it yet, but the next few minutes would test more than his strength. They would test his dignity, his resilience, and his right to be seen as more than just a job title. The black belt's voice cut through the air like a blade, mocking and playful, but with just enough bite to sting. "Hey, janitor," he called out, tossing his gloves aside. "Why don't you show us what you've got? Sweep the mat instead of the floor." Laughter rippled through the gym, each chuckle landing like a slap. For most, it was harmless fun, but to the janitor, it was something more, a reminder of the way the world so easily reduced him to a punchline. At first, he shook his head, offering a polite smile, hoping the moment would pass. But the fighter wasn't finished. He stepped closer, circling, taunting, inviting the crowd to share in his cruelty. "Don't be shy," he pressed. "We'll go easy on you." The crowd leaned in, their curiosity sharper than their sympathy. It was no longer a joke, it was a spectacle. With hesitation heavy in his chest, the janitor finally stepped forward. Not because he wanted to, but because refusing would mean surrendering his dignity completely. He tightened the straps of borrowed gloves, his movements careful, deliberate, as if every action was being judged. Around him, the whispers grew louder. Some smirked, others pitied, but none believed. The first few moments were clumsy, the fighter darting in with light jabs, mocking every flinch and stumble. The crowd roared with laughter, their voices filling the gym with cruel amusement. Each blow wasn't meant to hurt, it was meant to humiliate. Sweat mixed with shame, and the janitor's pulse thundered in his ears. But then something shifted, a look in his eyes, quiet, steady, unshaken. Beneath the years of silence and servitude, there was discipline, strength. A past no one in that room had bothered to ask about. His stance grew firmer, his movements more precise. The laughter began to fade into murmurs, confusion replacing certainty. The black belt noticed too late. His playful arrogance had awakened something he hadn't expected. Each dodge, each counter, revealed that this was no ordinary man caught in a game. This was someone who carried battles no one had seen. Someone whose strength wasn't measured in belts or applause, but in survival. And just as the room leaned forward, sensing the shift, the moment arrived where mockery would turn into silence, where the truth, long overlooked, was about to erupt onto the mat. The black belt lunged forward, eager to finish the joke he had started. His fists swung with sharp confidence, expecting the janitor to stumble, to falter, to crumble under the weight of humiliation. But instead, something no one predicted happened. The janitor's body moved with a fluidity that only comes from years of practice, training hidden beneath the folds of an unseen life. He slipped past the punch, his feet gliding across the mat with practiced precision. Gasps filled the air. Before the fighter could react, a clean counter landed, not reckless, not wild, but perfectly timed. The black belt staggered, his smirk wiped away in an instant. The crowd froze. Silence spread like a wave. This was no accident. This was control. The janitor, once the target of ridicule, now stood unshaken, his eyes steady, his breathing calm. Every move he made spoke of discipline, of strength forged in places no one had ever cared to look. The black belt attacked again, harder this time, desperate to reclaim the dominance slipping from his grip. But the more he pressed, the more the truth revealed itself. Each strike was met with precision, each taunt swallowed by the sound of a crowd, realizing they had misjudged the man before them. And then, the defining moment. The janitor's strike landed with undeniable force. Not brutal, not vengeful, but decisive. The black belt hit the mat. The room went silent. No laughter, no applause. Just stunned faces staring at a man they had overlooked for far too long. In that breathless silence, the truth became impossible to deny. This wasn't just a sparring match. It was a revelation, a reminder that respect cannot be mocked into silence, and that strength often lives in the very people society chooses not to see. The black belt sat on the mat, stunned, his arrogance scattered like dust in the silence. The crowd, once eager to laugh, could only watch in disbelief. The janitor didn't raise his fists in triumph, didn't gloat, didn't demand the respect he was owed. Instead, he quietly pulled off the gloves, set them down, and walked away. His silence spoke louder than any victory shout could. In that moment, the lesson wasn't about fighting skills. It wasn't about belts, titles, or reputation. It was about dignity, about the simple truth that worth isn't measured by what someone wears, what job they hold, or where society places them. For years, they had seen only a janitor, but now they had witnessed the man. The story spread beyond the walls of that gym, not because a black belt had been humbled, but because of what it revealed. The danger of judging, mocking, and demeaning someone simply because of their place in life or the color of their skin. For the janitor, life returned to its quiet rhythm. He went back to sweeping floors, back to fading into the background. But to those who had watched, nothing looked the same. Every time he passed, heads lowered, not in pity, but in respect. And perhaps that was the real victory. Not a knockout, not applause, but a shift in how people saw him, and maybe how they saw countless others like him. Because the truth is simple. Strength, dignity, and humanity live in everyone. The question is, how many more people must be mocked, overlooked, or silenced before the world finally chooses to see them?